Welcome to another potentially off the wall episode of Cinematic Anarchy, where today we're going to be discussing a movie by the name of Frankie Freako. And with me today, discuss that film, one of our good friends from Hazard Valley Films, Benel.
Chris, what's going on?
Oh, that's a loaded question. After the week I've had, that's a loaded question, honestly. What's going on with you?
Well, I'm happy to be here. But a lot went on with me this week as well, but I'm happy to review this.
I I expertly avoided having to answer that question. just, just kind of pass it on. No, it's been a busy week. It's been a very busy week. I'm settling into my new 9 to 5 job, doing my thing here, dealing with the tax man, and thankfully the tax man worked in my favor this time, so things are a little better. So went from high stress to low stress to about medium stress.
If the tax man worked in our favor, our stress would be so much lower for all of us.
Right. Usually they're wondering why I don't have more money in their pockets, but this time they actually put a little extra in mine, so that's a nice thing to have happen.
Good to hear, man.
And yes, we're going to go ahead and get to discussing this movie that I ran across it while I was just sort of flipping through Instagram, and I'm like, what the hell is this? It was a new film. It had just come out recently, and I didn't know what to expect from it. What are your first impressions after watching the film the first time through?
Well, I don't know whether to thank you or curse you for introducing me to this movie, Chris. But first impressions is wow. Just wow. It brought me back, and I'm sure it brought you back to quite a few different movies of the 70s and 80s alien creature features. Uh, yeah.
Yeah, stuff like what is it, Munchies, Ghoulies, Gremlins, stuff like that.
Ghoulies, you hit it on the nail. Critters,
Critters,
right?
yes.
Oh, man. And
These
there's so
ones
many
were
different, there's so many different other aesthetics that I saw that reminded me so much of so many different movies. And I'm sure we'll get into it. But first movie that came to mind right from the beginning was Office Space.
I would say Office Space mixed with Ghoulies.
Exactly. You said it, man. Office Space mixed with Ghoulies. Exactly
Especially
right.
especially the guy Adam Brooks. He played Mr. Is it Bulcher? Blucher? I can't pronounce
Yeah,
his name.
Connor.
Oh no, I'm talking about the boss.
Oh yeah. Right. The boss.
Connor's easier to remember. Connor
Yeah,
Sweeney basically played himself in this movie. Connor
that's
Sweeney.
right. That's right.
Uh, it's interesting that they basically, we don't even need to name you something else. You can just play you with a bleach blonde hairdo.
That's right. I
Because
forgot that's his actual real name.
I think everything else that I've seen him in, he was just a brunette.
I can't recall. I this is probably the first movie I think I've seen him in. I can't recall any other movies he's been in, so I'm not too familiar with his resume.
A vast majority of his films have been low budget features. He's been in things like Father's Day, Manborg, Psycho Gorman, The Editor, stuff like that.
I see.
So they're all fairly low budget independent features, but that's the kind of stuff that I love. Absolutely love. So
I absolutely feel the same way, man. You know, you can only watch so many Oscar-winning movies. You need a little bit of fun, and I think that's what this film kind of provides.
so
Real bad, but real fun.
my first watch through this film, I was apprehensive when I first saw the trailer to it. So I was just, going through Instagram and I'm like, okay, I don't even remember the person who had it posted on their Instagram. And I will go through, I'll post it in our show notes. Who to blame for us having watched this movie. But I floated over to it and I'm like, you know what? I have to watch this. It seems like it's right up my alley. It seems like it's just weird enough for me to just absolutely love it. Um, and I'm not afraid to say that, yeah, I indeed loved this film. It was brilliantly stupid while also kind of. I was expecting more gore. I really was, but I'll deal with brilliantly stupid.
10 minutes into the movie, I'm thinking, Chris, what have you got me into? I might want to turn it off, but as it went on, Chris, I just like, you know what? I want to see what happens. I want to see how this plays out. And yeah, I eventually watched the entire film and weirdly enough, enjoyed it.
There were moments that I thought were hilarious. There were moments that I was like, did this guy just approach his like 10-year-old and say, let's make a movie together? Because some of this, it's humor that you would expect from a 10-year-old.
Yeah, man. Like I think we if we had the ability to do a film like this when we were 10, we definitely would have done it, man. Because that's what it seemed like at some point. It's like a couple of 10-year-olds from the neighborhood got together, put together some, puppeteering and said, "Hey, let's film in our, mom and dad's kitchen, trash the house and let's call it a film."
Right. What do mom and dad do when they go to bed? Oh, hot and heavy hand holding. Sometimes dad can only get through one-handed hand holding. Two hands is whoa. It's a special night. I
Yeah, that was definitely it was almost kind of a soft porn vibe that we were watching there for a minute, Chris.
uh, it felt like she wanted to go soft porn, and he barely knew how to get out of like public education video that you show in the classroom. This is what mommy and daddy do. They go into the bedroom, hold hands, and 9 months later, you were born. It's
People listening would be like, "What in the hell are you guys talking about?" But when you watch it, you'll know that Chris is on point from what he's saying. I gotta say.
I have one problem with some of the dialogue in the movie.
Okay,
Out of all this, I had one problem.
which
It's
is,
when she's talking to him and she says that he looks like a celebrity. So he gets back, he's all
oh
cocky, and she's
no,
like, "What celebrity do you think I look like?" And she says, "Gary
Gary
Busey."
Busey.
No, that is dead wrong.
Not
Look at
even
him.
close.
Even look at young Gary Busey. It doesn't quite look like
Yeah.
him. However, Jake Busey, his son, he's a spitting image.
Okay. Yeah. Jake Busey, Starship Troopers, Frighteners.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he
Okay.
looks a lot like Jake Busey. I don't,
Yeah.
I don't really get the Gary Busey thing.
No.
Gary Busey always looked like a next level drunk, and he did not look like that in this.
No, he looked more like a Dana Carvey, right? Meets, I don't know, man. It's but well, he Connor nailed his part.
Uh, I mean, Connor played Connor very well.
He did. He really did.
It makes me wonder if he's that kind of, square in real life. He was real proud of being bland.
Yeah, I think that was one of the real kind of character of him, where he leads to this whole, why he called the 800 number in the first place.
There was an excessive lack of cursing throughout the entire film. There was one curse word uttered that I can remember, and it wasn't him. It was some guy said shit on TV, like he had brought in this little cabinet to the antique show that Connor absolutely loves watching at night.
Oh, right. Let's
And
talk
when he
about that. Yeah.
and it seems like everything that was brought before that guy was like, yes, this is this thing, and it's absolutely fantastic, and it was handcrafted. It's absolutely worthless. So it's like the worthless antique roadshow.
It really was, though. It really was.
Just the guy, I guess he was happy that everybody else was being disappointed. It's not the antique roadshow that you go to watch, like, oh, you have this multi-million-dollar item that you brought to us. It's the guy that gets all the offshoot stuff. Like, you brought me this thing that basically looked like it was out of a box at Walmart, and you expect me to tell you it's worth $100.
Yeah,
No.
it's almost like when American Idol used to just let the really bad singers through just so we could get a laugh.
I still remember that one season of American Idol before they changed the way they do the voting.
Yeah.
The one season where they pushed like some of the worst singers all the way through, like was it
It was.
I want to say William, not William Hung. Is that
Yeah,
what
he
his
was
name
one of
was?
them. He was one of them.
He was one of there was a handful of them that they were just pushing through as sort of a joke, and they couldn't do anything about it because they had a certain type of voting style that everybody figured out. Oh, wait a minute, we can control how funny this show really is, so we can make it not a terribly serious singing competition this year. And then they changed it all up the following year.
Yeah, because I think they realized that they were traumatizing these kids for the rest of their life, man.
They wanted
And
to give the ones that normally would be outed, like, we'll give you a chance now.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think I only saw season one. I know we're kind of. I was guilty of watching, people destroy themselves on camera, and I kind of feel bad about it now. But it is what it was. I'm glad they changed the format. I never watched it again, but you know, I'm glad they
I
changed the format.
I only really watched season one myself. I heard about that season, and that's why I started watching that season. I'm like, oh,
Uh,
something pretty funny is happening. I'm gonna sit down and watch this
no, it
season.
was fucking hilarious. It
Then
was
I got
hilarious.
part
But
way
no,
through the next season, and I'm like, oh, they changed it up already. Damn,
uh,
too bad. Could have been a funny
yeah,
show.
it could have been. Maybe they ought to do something else like that, but neither here nor there.
Well, they changed it to basically, I guess, save the integrity of the show. But there's only so many of those shows that I can watch about people trying to sing or become the next, big thing, big
Yeah,
vocal artist. And after a while, that becomes boring to me. I don't watch reality television all that much.
you and me both. I think a lot of our population decided, you know what, we want some real shows, real movies like Freaky Frankie Freako. That's what I'm talking about.
I would watch Frankie Freako being subjected, or people being subjected to Frankie Freako. Like I'll watch Mama June meets Frankie Freako or something like that, or the guys from Jersey Shore are subjected to Frankie Freako. But
They deserve it.
just an entire show where you're pranking them and they have no clue what the hell is going on.
I'd actually tune to that. Let's see what happens.
How do you think that the Freakos would fare against some of the creatures from our past, the critters and ghoulies,
Well,
gremlins?
I mean, you know what? If as you're watching the movie, Frankie Freako, you notice these guys are actually not they too bad. They're not really that bad. And as you go on, you'll realize why they're not really that bad. They just want to party, trash a house, and drink booze, but at the end of the day, they wouldn't hold up against the gremlins and the critters and the ghoulies. They'd get destroyed.
I think that Frankie and Dottie might hold their own.
You think?
Uh, I what is it? What is the other guy's name? Frankie, Dottie, and Bardo, or something like that.
Yeah.
The third puppet, I can't remember his name worth the life of me. It's
What
it's
what
right over here next to me. Hold on a minute.
what's
It's
his motto?
Boink Bardo.
Boink Bardo.
Boink Bardo.
What's
He
what's
was
his what's his mantra, Chris?
Boink Bardo.
Yeah.
Shabadoo.
Shabadoo.
That's like the one thing that he says. Shabadoo.
Shabadoo.
Shabadoo. Well, that was only when he got the crap beaten out of him by Connor.
True.
I think Connor has a lot of interesting mannerisms throughout the entire show. I like that his thing. He says, "I'm going to count." It's not. I'm going to count to three. I swear by the Connor count of three. If you
The
don't,
Connor countdown.
the
That's
Connor
right.
count of three.
That's right. Yeah, the Connor count to three.
Uh, I went through the movie, like half the time I'm rooting for them, the other half of the time I'm like, you know what? I would really just prefer to just see him hurt himself. It There was a lot of slapstick comedy. I like that the boss he dealt with a lot of the damage that was done to him, just kind of laid down and took it.
Yeah, that his boss Buchler, was it Buchler? He
Buchler, I
was,
think.
yeah. He did him dirty, man. He did him pretty dirty.
Yeah. Mind you, Connor didn't see it. Connor was happily oblivious to everything going on around him, even when his boss was literally trying to throw him under the bus. He couldn't see it.
I like his subtle but unsubtle ways. Make sure you're shredding these documents
in front
right
of
in front of
that
that
camera.
camera.
Yeah. Make sure it's in front of that camera right there,
That
which
right
didn't
there.
happen. It didn't
No,
happen, by the way. They brought all the documents back to the house to shred them in the basement in front of his boss.
right. And we all know what happened to his boss, which was weird because, come on, man. Who carries that much glue in a barrel in their basement?
It was like a 10-gallon, 20-gallon drum of
And
glue.
it had to have been like 20 gallons, man. I had never seen that much glue in 1 gallon.
20-gallon drum of quick dry glue because this thing just hardened him to the floor.
It was like quick concrete, man, is what it looked like to me after a while.
I think, like, even in his own way, even though he was kissing his boss's ass, I think that Connor was perfectly fine with keeping him in the basement after that.
It
I
seemed
think
that
he
way.
knew in the back of his head, he's like, okay, I shredded these documents, but I knew what you were trying to do.
Yeah, how do you explain? Oh man, that's just it is so far. It's so far out there, but again, it just I stuck to it, and it was enjoyable in kind of a weird fucking way where you're like, okay, I really got to stop watching it, but you really don't want to stop watching it. So it's one of those movies that actually is a really bad but fun movie that you just, what do they say that you can't, a car wreck or a trade wreck, you can't not but stare and watch and see what happens, man.
I don't know if I would even liken it to a car wreck. It wasn't one of those movies where I thought was a complete disaster. Like, I appreciated the fact that they approached the entire movie with Connor's blandness. Like, even the people that technically shouldn't have been bland in his orbit were absolutely bland. His wife was bland. His boss was bland. His boss did remind me a lot of that guy from Office
Office
Space.
Space.
Yeah. I'm going to need you to shred those documents. Yeah.
Okay. Oh wait, is okay is from South Park.
South Park.
Okay.
That's the
Okay.
therapist or the school
Right.
psychologist, the
That's
guidance
right.
counselor.
The guidance counselor. Okay.
I can't remember his name worth the life of me either.
Me either. Me either. I never really watched South Park, but I did watch the movie Bigger, Badder,
And
and
Uncut.
Uncut. Oh man, I think I was dying laughing for a good 30 minutes
Didn't they have like an
nonstop.
uncensored version of that too? Like there
They
was
did. Yeah, yeah.
it's like there
I
was
don't
even
think
stuff we couldn't show in the theater. They knew
that's
it was South Park. We couldn't do certain things.
yeah. Otherwise, it would have been like NC-17 instead of rated R because it was pretty. I mean, pushing the threshold of
Well, that's their humor.
it
They always try
is.
to push the
It
threshold.
really is, and it's worked. I mean, yeah. How many years have they been around? You
It's like
know,
insult humor at its greatest.
I agree.
I Is there anything in the movie that you felt didn't work?
Is there anything in the Well, as you're going through, I don't know if your brain just turns off. Again, it's just my whole experience watching the movie. It's like I'm questioning it the whole time. None of it works, but it works, right? Like I'd have to watch it a second time just to go, okay, I get it now. But we get further into the movie. We're I mean, when they transfer over into the other realm, and I'm sure you want to talk about it. His that whole the big boss man and oh
Munch.
man, Munch. Um,
Yes.
again, it's enjoyably bad, and I almost had watched it a second time to really absorb everything I just saw because it's almost like this just
The big
can't
bad
be.
guy from the other universe. So is it Planet Funko or Freako or something?
Yeah, Planet Freako.
And it's Freak Lord President Munch and his henchman Crunch. So everybody seems to rhyme in one way or another. So you have Frankie Freako, and you
Yeah,
have Boink Bardo,
yeah.
Donnie Dunko. I don't know that Crunch had a second name.
Very reminiscent of Dodgeball. Laser, Blazer,
Well,
Ben Stiller stuff, right?
that's because Ben Stiller's character in that film was kind of a little simple.
He was. I
He
mean,
he thought himself as big as those guys, but was just sort of mean and simple. Uh, I think I kind of agree with you in a manner that there was a lot of stuff that shouldn't have worked, but when you slap it all together, it's not necessarily a train wreck, but it's like a bunch of disasters strung together to make something that's almost a perfect, so bad it's good kind of movie.
yeah, yeah. I mean that when Dottie, I guess we're giving up all sorts of, um, parts of the story. Spoilers. When
There's a spoiler alert at the head of our
right.
podcast every
Oh,
single
okay.
time, so
All
I
right.
make
Okay.
sure that we just go right into it. I don't care about, yeah,
Fuck it. So when he gets shot in the neck, and his neck literally opens up like the biggest laceration I've ever seen in the neck.
right.
I mean, how does he not just
I do love the continuity of making it so that he has to the entire rest of the film. He doesn't change. He wears the
no
same clothes, the blood all over
blood
his
all
neck
his
from beginning to the very end.
pretty much? Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's exactly right. It keeps you in the situation. Like this dude literally just got shot in the neck, but he's running around trying to fight these guys and yeah,
That technically means by the end of the movie, he hasn't showered in almost 3 days.
it does take place. Yeah, right. 3 days. Yeah.
It's because he is dressed in the same clothes when he goes to bed after calling Frankie Freako the first time, which is set up, by the way. The commercial is set up like a 900 number that you see. You want a hot date in the middle of the night. The guys that were just sitting up watching these kinds of movies at like midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. They had those 900 escort service numbers, $1.99 a minute, 99 cents each additional minute, just to talk about it.
I always wondered what would happen if you actually called those 900, because we were bombarded as kids in the 80s and 90s, 80s mainly, with those. Sometimes you can't sleep, man. You stay up till midnight and you see these commercials like, 375 for the first minute, $6 for each additional minute. I'm
I'm going to let you know what happens.
like,
Because as a kid who used to sit up watching those films,
yeah,
I used to watch late night with Rhonda
right,
Shear,
okay, yeah.
and Gilbert Gottfried and
Of
Joe
course,
Bob
Gilbert
Briggs
Gottfried.
and all that kind of stuff.
Wow, yeah.
My mother made the sorry mistake of getting HBO when I was
Oh
around 11 years
no.
old. Big mistake. So what happens when you call those numbers is two things. Number
Tell
one,
me.
you call the number and you're spending $1.99 a minute, 99 cents each additional minute. Essentially, there's two different types of lines. One is a person. You actually talk to a live human being on the other end.
Okay.
Uh, Most of those will hang up on an 11-year-old because they can tell they're talking to a kid. Uh, Number two,
Oh, good.
the other kind, I'm not on number two yet. The other kind is the pre recorded line, which you basically are listening to the
No.
audio of porn.
Ah,
That's what that is. So it's not
pre-recorded.
99 cents a minute to hear pre recorded porn.
Oh.
The second thing that happens is you get grounded for several weeks because your parents get the phone bill and they don't. There's nothing discreet about what they note the phone bill. It's like XXS porn, whatever.
Wow. How much did you rack up, Chris? How much did you rack up?
Uh, that would probably be the second most expensive phone bill I caused in my house.
Oh my goodness. And
Um,
you're how old? 10?
I was 11 years old.
11. Okay.
Yes. The first most expensive phone bill is a friend of mine.
Mm.
Back when it was considered long distance to call state to state.
Right?
And so I called a friend of mine who had moved away to college. I was probably about 17 at the time, and I stayed on the phone for 24 hours.
24 hours.
24 hours. I had a phone conversation with this lady, Allison,
Oh,
who
okay. Hey.
she was a good friend. She was the person that I will say introduced me to more bad horror movies than I can probably list. we'd go to like Blockbuster or like a local store and do like the 5 movies for $5 thing, and we'd just sit in the basement and watch movies all weekend long.
Oh man, that sounds fantastic.
And yeah, 24 hours on the phone with her, and that was a pretty hefty bill. Like, why are you calling Kansas for 24 hours? I missed my friend. that's that's all I could say. And I had to
That's
work it off. That was a lot of lawn mowing and backbreaking gardening and stuff like that.
24 hours. That's impressive.
Yeah.
I yeah, I you know, and we were never really allowed to speak on the phone with our friends at that age. So, you know, plus I don't think I had any friends outside of the state.
Nobody calls on the telephone anymore. It's all texting. This is as much like face to face social interaction as I get right here.
Really? Yeah.
Well,
That's
okay,
true.
that's
No,
not
you're right. You're right. You know, other than calling family from
that's
afar.
that's kind of an exaggeration. Like this is like the phone calls that I would make in the past. So rather than make a telephone call, I'm making a video call to do a podcast for a few hours every weekend. Sometimes it's like 4 to 5 hours because I can't get the equipment running because I'm about as technologically savvy as any grandpa is. Uh,
Can you imagine had we had some this kind of technology, Chris, back when we were growing up in the 80s? FaceTime with our, you know, lady friends, FaceTime with our friends. I
dude,
can only imagine what I mean. We dreamt of this, seeing this in cartoons and in movies, TV shows, to have the ability to see each other, you know, while communicating. I saw this once, I think, in a GI Joe episode where I think it was Duke and Lady J were literally they had a little FaceTime device, and I was like, "Holy shit!" And this was what 1984, maybe. I mean, the ideas were always there, but the technology just hadn't caught up.
I
So,
can't imagine how clunky that equipment would have looked. I mean, because back then, like, phones were gigantic. Like,
oh,
yeah, I
it's
couldn't
like a
imagine.
brick,
I
you know?
trying to move my father's IBM compatible computer.
Yeah.
Like, the base unit was heavy as hell, probably about like 20 pounds. The monitor was like 20 pounds. You got almost 100 pounds just lifting one computer. Add a camera to that, and I don't imagine it would have worked out too well.
Probably not.
Dial up kind of brought us a little bit of extra communication.
Yeah.
You don't want to put that technology in the hands of a kid that was calling adult telephone numbers for hours on end for about a month before getting absolutely thrashed with a belt.
Oh
Oh yeah,
man,
this is back when corporal punishment was still a thing. You could take a belt to your kid's ass and nobody would say a damn
bro,
thing about it.
I'm Filipino, man. You know, our old school grandparents and parents, you know, kept us disciplined, not by words, you
All
know.
right.
But I'm glad they did. I'm glad they did. I am the man who I am today, and I was able to, you know, change it up with my kids. So, you know, it's the evolution of discipline, the evolution of, you know, parenting. You know, some people may not agree, which should have never happened, but we are where we are. Hey, movies wouldn't be movies today if it weren't for movies like Critters and Gremlins and Ghoulies in terms of what we're talking about. You know, I mean, Frankie Freako. I don't even think I can get the damn title of the damn movie right. What is
No,
it? Frankie Freako.
yeah, you said it. You said it right.
Okay,
Frankie
like
Freako.
it's like an homage to remind, you know, almost like this young generation and say, hey, we this was entertaining to us 20, 30 years ago, even 40 years ago. You know, I mean, the most silliest, campiest type of creature features took place right about when we were young, when we were kids, man, preteen. So that's why we appreciate this kind of movie right now, coming out in 2024 of all years. And it was because we've seen so much over time. I can sit here and go, you know what? I was telling my wife, babe, you got to watch this. It's so ridiculous, but so funny and fun at the same time. And you know what? I may actually watch it again just to see what I missed in the film.
So I've watched it 3 times in the past 2 days.
You did? Oh
Yes.
man, I'm fucking behind, man.
So
I had only been able to catch it once.
I rented it the first time,
Okay.
and here's how I feel about independent films.
Yeah.
If I watch your movie and I like it after watching it the first time, I actively search to purchase a physical copy of it. So, like, I'll go by this other group that I've worked with, Clock Out Films.
Okay.
They did a movie called Slaughter Beach, which we sat down and we watched, and I thought was absolutely hilarious. So immediately I'm like, okay, you have to be selling this somewhere. It's like, oh yeah, we sell Blu-rays from blah 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 blah. Okay, then I
Wow.
want to invest what I can
Yeah.
into the people that created that film. I
That's
know they're
awesome.
not getting anything from people watching it free on Tubi, and I imagine, and you can probably speak to this on your own behalf, that you're probably not getting as much as you'd like out of the YouTube format.
You never do. You know, unless you're getting thousands upon thousands of views consistently, it becomes a labor of love.
I mean, I verified myself on YouTube, so I have up to a year to meet their goals before they tell me I can't post long videos anymore. Basically, like I can post these lengthy videos
Yeah.
up until up until a point, and then after I reach 365 days, if I haven't reached the amount of subscribers they'd like and the amount of views, hours viewed, yada yada yada,
Yeah.
then I'm shit out of luck. We go back to just being an audio podcast, which so I don't have time to do the road work for YouTube. I'm barely doing the road work for being a podcast and getting that out there. So I think I have an issue with being the kind of people that I see or listen to all the time, if that makes any sense.
It does.
Um, I don't necessarily like to be the guy that starts off my podcast. Don't forget to click that like, subscribe, share button because, like, at that point, I something in the back of my head goes, I got to turn this off. And I know that kids that are younger, 10 years younger, 20 years younger than me,
Yeah.
uh, 30 years younger, because I'm 47 years old, so I mean, 17-year-olds are probably better programmed because everything that they watch has that attached to it. They're programmed to go, oh, yeah, like, share, subscribe. And they're more susceptible to it. For me, it's just an annoying little thing that they add. It's like, you know what? I even feel like the review, or not the review, the spoiler alert that I do at the beginning of the podcast almost feels ridiculous to me. You're listening to a movie review podcast. If you think that we're not going to talk about everything involving that particular movie,
I personally
I don't
like
know
it.
what to tell you.
Yeah. I mean, I said earlier I don't want to give up any spoilers, but I I already knew that that's exactly what we do, and it just kind of went over my head.
It's
Uh,
like, I want to give up spoilers.
yeah. Well,
Honestly, if
I
you have not watched the movie and I spoiled something for you, I'm sorry. I
yeah.
apologize that much. Just that much.
I say go watch the movie, come back and watch this podcast, and then you'll understand why we feel the way we feel about the movie.
Go watch the movie because we never discussed the film in chronological order.
We
My
did not.
ADHD brain can't walk through the beginning to the end.
No.
It's like,
Well,
oh, you know what I want to talk about? I want to talk about this. I want to talk about the fact that this guy was basically cum glued to the ground till Christmas.
that's he was. He was though. I thought it too. I'm like, what in the hell?
Like, I don't understand what just happened here. Basically,
No.
nobody went looking for the guy. He is in his
No.
basement next to the burned corpse of a Freako, who apparently, by the way, has a human skull inside of him upon morphing into Super Munch or whatever he was, Uber
Right.
Munch. And he'd been down there till Christmas. You kind of failed on your promise to get your buddy out of there, your boss out of there after he
I
was done.
you said earlier I don't think he intended to. I think he just like, you're staying in my basement. You're just gonna stay in my basement. You know?
How bad does your life have to be to get glued to the floor in that manner, and then the thought in your mind after everybody leaves the room is, I always knew this would happen.
Yeah, he did say that.
What's
Where?
going on in your head every single day that you're like, one of these days somebody is just going to forcefully glue me to the floor stuck in a bear trap?
We didn't even talk about the bear trap. The bear
No.
trap was literally right in front of him, and he still walked right into it. It wasn't hidden. It
It,
wasn't disguised.
it was worse than that. He came across the box that says bear trap
Bear
in it
trap,
and
and
then
it
kept
was
looking up.
missing.
He kept looking up.
I mean, how do you trust a guy that? I mean, he was attracted and sexually attracted to Dottie.
Right. He basically is describing, so Connor is basically describing to his boss that these gremlins are attacking him, and that is why he cannot physically shred the papers on camera like his boss would like. Uh, by the way, that whole scene where he's trying to shred the papers and his boss is just
Oh,
behind the counter, like right there, shred the
I
focus,
and it
Connor.
was like in slow motion. It was like in slow motion. I was like, shred the fucking papers already. He would get to the tip of the sheet of paper, turn around, see his boss, do it again. I mean, actually, that was pretty good how they filmed that. It was pretty funny. I was like, you were in anticipation to see if a piece of paper is going to be shredded because we knew once he gets shredded, it was over for him. I mean, he did it right in front of the camera. So,
I don't know
needless
that
to
it would
say,
have been over for him though. Like it's just something about his bland naivety that he would not only purposefully walk into what is essentially a trap, but on top of it, he had to have known it was a trap. But he wants to impress his boss so much that he doesn't care. Yes, I'll do that for you. Not only that, he gets out of the situation. His boss tries to help him with his problem, and that same bland naivety doesn't seem to apply to the traps that are being set around his own house.
no.
Because he saw the two gun traps, even though he
Yeah.
stepped full force on the nails on the ground.
Oh no, he did, and then the gun trap where the rope was tied to the trigger, and
This is
he
why I
still
thought it was.
carefully walked over the rope, and then that trigger was like moving and moving and moving. Yeah, the directors and the writers definitely knew how to keep us on the edge of our seat for those scenes.
This is why I think like the guy who wrote this was writing it from the perspective of a 10-year-old who had watched way too many Roadrunner cartoons. Just like the guns being set up on little draw lines, and then he looks down and he sees the lines and he doesn't want to trigger one, almost bumps into another, but obviously does not see the nails stuck to a board on the ground that should have been within his eyesight when he looked down and saw the wires or the ropes.
It's unexplainable, but it made sense for this movie.
And of course, the boss, who is unabashedly flirting with Dottie, the little redheaded gremlin. Sounds like a cutie to me. Okay, your boss sounds a little rapey. I don't like him.
I mean, to her defense, her beauty was hidden behind a little handkerchief rag. So
Yeah, but if she looked like anything like Frankie or Binko or Binky or whatever his name is,
yeah,
that's the one guy's name that I can't remember. It's Binky Bardo or something like that.
yeah,
Binko
Boinko,
Bardo, Boinko,
Boinko.
Boink Bardo, Boink Bardo.
There you go.
By the
I
way,
mean, I
Boink
could.
Bardo, Mr. Shabadoo, is also voiced by Adam Brooks, the guy that plays the boss.
Mm,
So,
that's just multi-talent right there, man.
oh, I'm hoping that they're setting up for some sequels because seeing the little panels at the end of the movie, like where they're out on the date, or like the Freakos in space, or Freakos go to Hawaii or whatever. I'm hoping that they get to experience
I
some more
I
sequels.
I almost feel like there's enough fans that will turn this movie and maybe in the next year into a cult classic, man.
I mean, if
Because
Winnie
you
the
know what,
Pooh,
man, Chris, we haven't even talked about the Indiana Jones scene. We haven't talked about the Terminator's inspired scenes. You know, there's so much left with this film that he took every idea that he had and just put it in the blender and then just threw it into his film and for
Yeah.
whatever odd reason made it work.
I think what did they like for that one scene where they basically have the device that is supposed to measure how freaky you are and then zap you according to how freaky you are.
But
And Munch just gets melted. And I think like that's one of the Indiana Jones scenes. I feel like it's a mix of the Dial of Destiny along with the what is that? The Ark of the Covenant? When
yeah,
he's
yeah,
gonna melt everybody.
Raiders of the Lost Ark and
Yes.
the Ark of the Covenant, and then also the scene, the Temple of Doom with the miner, right? It had that feel to it. I mean, even though
I need an
it was
explanation.
so
That scene I need an explanation for because Boink is supposed to be like their tech expert, like the guy that knows technology, and
right.
a lever that says on and off, and he's confused. And Munch, half melted face and all, has to come in and save the day by pushing it into on. Your tech expert's worthless.
You know what? I mean, you had to designate somebody as the tech.
Just because he has the headgear, like the
Yeah,
cyborg
sure.
headgear and
Right.
the backpack or whatever that was, doesn't mean he's the tech expert. That means he is possibly an expert that wears tech. Expert in what? I don't jams. Music. That's he can press the button on a boombox. He knows that.
You know, he did a pretty good job with that boombox. There was one scene where he pressed the dial and to turn up the volume, but it was so obvious it was the tuning dial.
Um,
I mean, I could have seen it went so fast. It felt like he was turning the tuning dial, but he thought it was the volume, but the volume went up anyway. Um,
maybe he rewired it.
yeah,
I
I
don't know.
mean,
For the
anything
dial,
goes
it
with
was
this
easier for
film.
him because he's got short, little, chubby fingers. So
He
maybe he had to
does.
do it was easier for him.
Yeah, this movie definitely anything goes.
But Frankie and Dottie are really the only ones that have a legitimate power, so to speak. Because like uh, I'm Freaky Franco.
Mm-hmm.
Frank Freako. Okay,
All right, man. I'm
my brain
still trying to figure
is
it out myself.
yeah, it's Frankie Freako. My brain just went off the rails there. It's the middle of the day. It's Sunday. I'm realizing that my weekend is coming to an end. By the way, this is probably not going to come out on a Sunday. It'll probably be coming out Monday. But uh, recording day is Sunday. But Frankie Freako has that weird demonic power that if anybody shows him a cross, he basically turns into a demon that sets whatever's in front of him on fire. Uh, and it doesn't seem like it's something he can control either.
So, so when Connor opened up that secret chest that he had and unlocks it and opens it up, I
Right.
did not see a cross coming from
No,
that chest.
not at all.
That made me go, "Whoa, okay, okay, okay."
Freaky ancient chest with a massive metal padlock on it, and out of
Yeah,
that came a hand carved cross.
yeah, it worked.
What is going on in his life that he needs a cross in such a box?
Yeah,
Like, that's his in case of emergency ancient chest.
that's exactly right. It was his case of emergency, and you know what? There was an emergency. He brings it out, and it works. It worked.
Well, it doesn't. It doesn't. I mean, he basically pissed off Frankie. He realized what it did,
Yeah,
and it
I guess
burnt.
you're right. It did make things a little bit. It escalated things.
It escalated things real quick. Like I think shortly after, isn't that like shortly after that is when he had already been shot,
Mm-hmm.
and this is when they decided to just destroy the place. Like
Completely.
even more so, like they were using the swinging paint cans to trash the sculptures. Uh,
Oh,
just further destroy the house.
those sculptures, those paint cans. It's almost as if, okay, what are we gonna do? There's gonna be this like gaps in the story. We need to destroy the sculptures. How do we destroy the sculptures? Oh, I know, swinging paint cans.
What I'm trying to figure out here is the moral to the story, because
There's a moral to the story, Chris.
there ha- at a certain point you think the moral to the story is that him being bland is what saves the day, because him being bland is what kept him from getting absolutely fried by that machine, by not being a freako, so to speak.
He wasn't freako enough. That's right. He was
Uh,
spared.
he wasn't even remotely freako. He was literally all green. Shouldn't that be the red light for them?
Yeah.
Like, why does it? Shouldn't the red light should be the warning that this guy has no freak in him whatsoever.
Wow.
He's absolutely bland. But that's what saves his day at that point. But even by the end of the movie, it's because his wife wanted him to be more freaky.
Right. That's the twist. His wife set him up so he could see that video. Right? Or am I wrong that his wife wanted him to see that
Oh
Frankie
yeah,
Freako video
his
so
wife
he
set him
would
up for
call
that
it? Whoa.
because she had once been or experienced Frankie Freako because of Dottie. Dottie Dunko and her went to gun college.
It's so far far out, man.
Like, he lives with a gun nut wife, and all he has in his safe is a cross.
Maybe he kept that for her.
Well, I mean, Frankie made sure all the guns disappeared too at one point,
Oh yeah.
because that's when they went into the basement. It's like he took all the guns.
Mm-hmm.
Is Are guns like a thing for them? I wonder.
Yeah,
Like,
I think
guns
so.
would have taken them out. What are their weaknesses specifically, other than obvious hypnotism,
You're gonna have,
reprogramming?
yeah, you're gonna have to fill me on that one. I don't recall what their weaknesses are, Chris. I don't
I don't
recall at
know that
all.
they have any weaknesses, honestly, other than
Mhm.
rope is obviously a weakness because they got tied up.
Oh, and yeah, and speaking of rope and being tied up, how does a man last that long being hanged for a good how many minutes?
Well, he had his hands inside the rope at first. And I mean, technically, you could be choked for a pretty long. I mean, he had his
I
hands
don't.
in there.
Yeah,
So he was loosening the grip. It wasn't completely choking him at first.
but he was suspended, so that's okay. Okay,
He was
maybe,
he was up there long enough to
maybe.
see Frankie's entire history and his planet's history, and the only thing, he's choking the entire time, and then he hears that Munch basically had imprisoned all these people and turned them into phone operators for his business. And when he saw that, they near to tripled, quadrupled their profits by hundreds of percents or whatever, and uh, that is not the line. That made no sense coming out of my mouth. But the point was that he had exponentially increased the profits of his company, and he takes a moment from choking to go, oh, and then goes back to choking. He has a moment of clarity while hanging from a noose before going back to having his lights choked out by it.
It's almost like you know ah, maybe man, it's so hard to explain. It's so hard to you don't. It's an experience, man. Watching this movie is definitely an experience, and you've got to shut everything down and just go, all right, let me put myself, you know, as in the perspective of a 10-year old back in 1981, watching these old creature features and just go with it. And it will take you. I couldn't predict this movie.
I mean, I could probably happily watch this film with like one of my nieces or nephews with no problem, because there's no real violence in it. There's no real blood or gore in it. It like a good introductory feature to like the creature features from like the 80s and 90s, like the critters and the gremlins and the hobgoblins and stuff
The
like that.
ghoulies and the yeah.
You know, it's not anywhere near as intense as watching a Gremlins movie, because obviously the Gremlins were a lot more freaky and intense than these characters were. This was more on the lines of watching what was it? There was an 80s Munchie.
Munchie. I
Munchie.
never saw that one.
Go ahead and you'll see what I mean. Go ahead and watch it. It's more of a PG level film
Yeah.
than it is, you know, anything hard R. It was definitely born out of the Gremlins and Ghoulies phase, where people were trying to figure out how to do different spins on that. Hobgoblins was probably the worst low budget version of that, because they were basically hand puppets that looked like they were born out of Don King's wig. You know, it
That's a
was
description.
it's a pretty apt description, and even the scenes where they were attacking people, like here, these are fully animated puppets. These are like, you know, you can really get into watching them because they feel like real creatures. They still seem like hand puppets at certain points, but they don't feel like just somebody threw a stuffed animal into a scene and now you're supposed to act with this stuck stuffed animal just kind
Yeah.
of on you. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to lay this stuffed animal on you, and in this scene you're supposed to roll around like it's actually physically attacking you. Congratulations, you've killed hobgoblins. I've watched both of the Hobgoblins movies. There was supposed to be like a third or something, and it never
Yeah.
got off the ground.
No,
It was bad.
dude.
Just bad.
Damn.
uh,
Did you ever see like Leprechaun?
I
The
have all
Leprechaun
seven
film?
of them.
Oh, you
I
do?
have the
Okay.
entire collection.
Wow.
Oh yeah, Warwick Davis, of course. I loved his stuff. He was funny as hell.
Yeah.
Some of
Works
those movies were
legend.
hard to watch, but he was funny no matter what.
Yeah. Man, that guy's career and resume is just legendary.
He's still going. He's
Um,
still doing
how
stuff.
old is that man? Is he not like he has to be in his 60s
You asking me to
easily,
Google
right?
things right now?
Well, he was a teenager
Oh, he was
during
very
Return of the
young back
Jedi,
then.
right? Yeah, he was just a little.
When he
He
was
was a
doing
young
the
kid.
Ewoks, and then there was Willow.
Yeah, Willow. Yep.
And I think he even had like a very short-lived television show. I can't remember the name of it either. I'll have to look that up afterwards. But I'm going to look up Warwick Davis here because I am not entirely sure
I'm
how
gonna
old he
guess
is.
if we're in our late 40s, Chris, he's got to be like almost 60.
Oh, he is 54 years old,
Oh,
born
okay. So
in
he's missing. Wow.
1970.
Oh,
So
damn.
that's an accomplishment, though. I mean,
That
seven.
yeah, to have that kind of career, you know.
They could keep
I
going
mean,
back
he's
to
still
him for
relatively
the
young.
Leprechaun, at the
He
very
would.
least. I would say he's probably. I'm trying to figure out the PC term for this too, because I don't think that I know off the top of my head what it would be. Uh,
Dwarfism.
he's yeah, a dwarfism. Yeah, he has dwarfism. I that's my problem, is I don't do PC very well, and it's not that I don't respect other people. It's just
No.
that sometimes the appropriate term doesn't rattle off my tongue like it should, and so they're like, no, you should be going and doing this.
Yeah, well,
And I'm like,
what's appropriate, what was common then, is has changed over the years. So we have to be a little bit, I understand. I'm with you. I'm of that generation where we said things and labeled things and called things as they were, as well as we knew it. But
I
things
am
evolved, language evolves.
of the problematic generation where my parents were constantly saying things, and so the problem is growing up with parents that were constantly saying the wrong thing. And it's slowly getting a little bit better, because like then you got, okay, well, I'm supposed to be a little bit more PC about this, and we're supposed to change our ways, so you try a little harder, and then your kids try even harder.
Yeah.
And now I have a child that holds me accountable every time something spills out of my mouth. Like, nope, that's the wrong way to say that, and don't do that. And you're saying the wrong thing, and I'm trying to learn pronouns and PC
Yeah,
terms.
can
And
be real exhausting sometimes, I'm sure, man.
there's one thing that gets me every time, and it is because English. things don't English in my head the right way with they, them, that pronoun.
Mm.
Because calling a single person by a term that usually refers to a group of people, it makes
It,
my brain hurt a little bit.
yeah,
So,
it's difficult to compute.
so nothing against anybody that
No.
identifies that way. I will personally have trouble saying that, so you'll find me avoiding it. I'll call you by your name, and then I
Hey,
will
names
use
still stand, you know.
I'll use the accidental pronoun that makes sense to me, and then you can just correct me. That's all I ask you to do. Correct
There
me.
you go.
I'm not
Fair
trying to
enough.
insult you. Just correct me.
Fair enough, man. Fair enough.
The only time I don't like when people correct me is when directions. No, no, I'll figure it out. I got it. I got it.
Are you? Do you use GPS?
You have the GPS in front of you. How did you miss the last three exits? It keeps telling you to turn around because Siri doesn't know what it's talking about.
Oh, Chris,
Rerouting.
I fought GPS for so many years with my kids and my wife. I'm like, I'm not using GPS. I know how to get here, but over time, it's like I almost surrendered and like, okay, fine. I mean, you know, I delivered pizza at 18, 19 years old. You know, they would hand you a ticket with the address. You got 30 minutes to get there. You had a Thomas Brothers, find the location, get to the location, come, you know, you come back, get another, you know, these kids today, um, they're amazed on how did we get around without GPS, man? And I'm like,
Here's the thing.
we learned our community, we memorized our direction, we memorized locations and landmarks, and we got really familiar with our city, our town where we live. We knew everything and everywhere, streets, back streets, alleys, where to go, where not to go, you know, the fastest way. You know, going when I lived in San Diego, you know, I knew how to get home 12 different ways. I knew how to get to work 12 different ways. You know, I never got lost because I knew if there's traffic, I avoided traffic like the plague. I knew how to get to, you know, routines, how to get from one place. I knew, you know, but that's over years of using a map, using an actual paper map, and I got familiar with, which is what I'm doing now here in Washington. Is, you know, I moved there. I'm about to be here for a year now, and the first 6 months, you know, I was using the GPS, and now I know this place pretty well, at least a good 15 mile radius.
My biggest thing is that if the world were to ever, like, shit were to hit the fan,
Yeah,
EMP blast, whatever, if something knocked out the systems that provide us our GPS,
yeah.
oh my God, so many people would be just lost. Lost. Because I can
Abs-
remember the day
Dude.
where I had to physically write down directions that somebody gave me to be able to get to their house.
Yeah,
And it was a mixture of routes, street names, and having to look for landmarks.
landmarks. Yep,
And now it's literally just follow GPS, and sometimes even the GPS fucks with you.
all the
It's
time, man.
solidly fucked with me one day. So I'm traveling with my daughter,
Mm-hmm.
and we're using GPS to find our way back home from a certain event. It was like up in New Hampshire.
Okay.
And we're traveling down this dark side road, and we come to a main road, and the GPS tells us to take a left.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not quite seeing what the problem is at first, and my daughter definitely didn't see what the problem is. She took a left to the outer lane,
Oh
like you're
boy.
supposed to, because you're
Yep.
supposed to drive on the right hand side of the road.
Right.
We're traveling for a little bit, and I'm noticing cars coming at us in that lane. That's when I take a
Oh
quick look to the right, and I'm
man.
like, pull off the road right the fuck now.
Holy shit.
Siri didn't recognize that there was a median strip in the middle of the road. And so it thought that it was sending us out to turn left into the outer lane when it turned us into the left-hand lane.
Oh my.
So it turned us into oncoming traffic. There was no way to cross the median strip from there. We would have had to gone 3 streets up just to get past that median strip. So my
Holy.
daughter is panicking,
Yeah,
And this was like this is near to a pants wetting incident where you're just freaking out. Traffic's coming at you. You're looking for the first inlet, like parking lot, driveway, whatever, to get the hell out of the street. And she
absolutely.
was this close to getting hit by an oncoming car, just blaring the horn at her.
Oh my
And
gosh.
she's like, Dad, I'm getting out. You drive home. I'm like, no, you got to be able to get past this. Sometimes the GPS is not even correct. You have to be able to see the road signs, see where you are, be able to gauge where you are. So she's a better driver for that incident because she
Nice.
knows that sometimes even Siri is going to try to drive you into a lake or something, you know.
It's happened. There are news of these type of things happening because people literally, trust their GPS 100%, but you're not actually looking at your environment going, hold on, wait a minute. This doesn't feel right. Like you're using your feel, you're using your senses. So I try to tell my kids, man, hey, you know what? Rely on it, but at the same time, familiarize yourself with your location.
Yeah, I don't think it's because right now most of your GPS is internet based, not satellite based.
What do you mean by that?
Meaning that your ability to be able to get a good signal for your GPS on your phone
Yeah.
is based off of whether or not you have a good signal in that area. If the signal goes out, after a bit, it'll stop following where you are. It'll freeze.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying.
So it's
Because
been
I
areas.
thought you meant there's a difference between a satellite,
Well, there is,
signal
because there
and
are
then
some physical GPSs that
mhm.
don't require like a Wi-Fi signal or anything to that nature. It goes
Oh,
off
okay.
satellite.
Oh yeah, okay. I see.
So yeah,
Damn.
everything on your phone is based off your Wi-Fi signal. There's nothing satellite based about that.
Okay.
So if you go into an area that has shit signal, your GPS is about as worthless as anything. You don't experience that in city areas at all because you usually get pretty good Wi-Fi one way or the other.
True.
Getting back to the movie,
Yeah.
because I have a tendency to ramble and go off in other directions.
It's always fun though. I don't mind it.
Are there any elements in this movie you felt you could have done without?
I was watching it the first time around. I've only seen it once. I literally would have to watch it again because then you have a different perspective. You can absorb more of the film itself. So there really isn't anything that I would go, yeah, that definitely needs to go. That definitely needs to go. I wasn't too keen on the wife per se. Like you said earlier, all the characters are pretty bland. I think it
Right.
was purposely done so. I mean, that's the whole point of why Frankie Freako comes into the picture. Um, again, I there's something in the producers or the directors or the writers' head that this makes sense to them. So you kind of have to look at it and go, I'm gonna go with it. If
Okay.
I watch it the second time around and go, yeah, maybe they could have done without all the sexual innuendos, but it's important because you got to know Connor's character and he's like maybe the see I was saying remember the presentation that he had in the office with all those with the executives and they too were bland. They were just like kind of sitting there going, staring into space as he's giving his presentation. Again, I think I'm gonna take some time, watch it again, just for my own, kind of
To get a little
entertainment
more out of it.
purpose. Sure.
So there is one line in the movie that actually made me look at the movie differently the second time I watched it.
Okay.
So I want you to think about this line when you watch it the second time.
Okay.
There's a point right after he breaks down from shredding the documents where he wonders if they are in hell. Do you think this is hell? Are we in hell? Are we in the bad place? And his boss is like, you know what? I'm going to have to make a few phone calls and check with some people about that. But I started thinking about it because when you
Yeah.
when you really think about it, everybody in his life, everybody surrounding him except his wife, they're all bland, monotone drones. He seems to have a little bit of extra life compared to everybody else. And then his wife is even more than that. So I'm wondering if he is in his own personal hell, basically having lived an absolutely nothing bland existence and in some way not being able to even break out of that after being shown the way by the Freako gang.
Yeah, I mean, all of those things that occurred in this movie, I could possibly say that he may have this may be his own hell, and who knows? Maybe the second part will suggest that and kind of make their plot around why he experienced what he experienced.
I think his boss even said that he was, after he got glued to the floor, that yes, yes, we are definitely in hell.
Yeah, I mean,
But
no
he says it
shit.
in the most bland way humanly possible. Just yes, yes, I definitely think we're in hell. Okay, best and worst acting performances in the film, which is tough to really gauge because there's not a lot of actors in the film.
I mean, for me, they could have got a better wife in place of her. You know, she was a. I mean, hey, she likes that older. She seems a little older to me. I think for him, she seemed like she had some age on him. Did she not? You
Yeah,
know,
yeah. I I have to agree to a point. Like I'm not sure she may have been able to do a better job if they had given her a little bit more leeway. I think they could have ramped up the contrast between the two characters.
true.
I think compared to his blandness, she should have been like exponentially more, I guess in this case, freaky. Uh,
Right. That would make sense. There's a contrast there, and it would make sense for her to really want him to like kind of raise his level to meet her, and but oh she seemed kind of blind herself in to a certain degree.
she was PG freaky, is what she was.
True.
That they could only go so far with it. So, and unless you wanted to go for a PG-13 R rating. Uh, okay, best performance in the film.
Oh, Connor.
I mean, yeah, Connor would be the probably my choice too. I like the boss for what he was. I think that he was just kind of a mixture of bland and weird, just devious, bland. He did a very good job being him. I feel like that hairdo was kind of tacked on though, the ponytail that he had.
Yeah.
It didn't feel like it was part of his head, though. I think after looking at the pictures, that is actually his hair. Uh, so my toss up is honestly between Connor and his boss. The fact that Connor Sweeney, his name in the movie is Connor Sweeney.
Yeah.
So that gave it a very Tony Danza thing because like everything that Tony has ever done has always been Tony.
That's true, huh?
So everything he's been in, they called him Tony or Anthony or some derivative of his actual name because I guess he had trouble acting or talking to people that were calling him by a different name. It just didn't work in his head.
I didn't know that. Wow.
So it was always Tony. Uh, and Tony Danza, I've only read that as a story. If that's actually not true, come on the podcast. Come talk to us. I wouldn't mind.
Right?
Shameless requests. I don't mind at all. I'll talk to big name stars, even though I'll probably be blah 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 blah. You know, I'll be rendered Porky Pig stuttering on myself. You know. So they left this open for a sequel. What do you feel they could do with a sequel to this film? I think Christmas is too obvious because they said, "Yeah, why don't you stay for Christmas?"
Right. There was a kind of a Christmas tone there at the final few minutes. Um, maybe Connor and the Freakos team up and go back to Planet Freako and maybe save some of the other Freakos from captive or from slavery or from the control of the boss. I don't know. You have to remind me if did they kill off the boss?
No, at the very end of the movie, he was still glued to the floor. That's
No,
when
no,
he
no,
said
not
"Merry
that boss,
Christmas."
but Munch.
Yes, that was the second attempt at using the cross to turn on Frankie's powers.
Oh, right. No, yes, okay. And so I mean, you know what? Where they cut the head of the snake, another head grows. So who knows if there's somebody waiting in Planet Freako, that's taken over.
I say insane Freako President Munch. Or Crunch. Munch was the guy that they killed. Crunch was the guy that was essentially the Beaker of this film. Remember Beaker
Right.
from the Muppets?
Oh yeah. Oh right, right, right. It's a good impersonation.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. I mean, who knows? There might be a second in command that's taking over, and these guys can get together, and it'd be an adventure.
I say that they go with the one frame at the end of the film. So they had artwork done at the end of the film to kind of show different scenes of Frankie Freako and the group kind of doing different things. I would like to see Frankie Freako in space battling the Bigfoot or Sasquatch or whatever they want to call it. So at the very end of the film, see, look at that Bigfoot. You've got your cryptid mug right there.
When in Washington, I've
Uh,
told you, man, they love Bigfoot up here.
oh, of course. I think the most sightings have been up that way, right?
It's been a lot.
Pardon me, dry throat. No rain here for weeks. The river behind me is drying up.
No
They're
way.
talking about going into conservation mode with the water. It's we haven't had precipitation in a while.
What? I know you're in Massachusetts, but what town?
I'm in Haverhill, Mass. We're about 30 minutes north of Boston.
Oh wow, and it's drought. I
Yep.
mean, it's dry.
Yeah,
Wow.
we're in drought territory here. Like I have lived in the area for a long time, and I don't think I have seen quite as much of the riverbed over here as I've seen recently. It's gotten to the
Really?
point you could almost cross it at low tide.
That's dang.
That's not the best. I mean, I'm not going to try to cross it because mud. Uh, but it's pretty bad over here. As
Wow.
much as I can laugh about bad weather.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I would definitely want to see. I would like to see them ramp it up though, because they went hard towards the PG territory here.
Yeah.
And I would like to see them, if they continue to do sequels to the film, push the envelope just a little bit, maybe do one more PG film, then push it to PG 13 as Connor becomes a little bit less bland with each film until you finally get the hard R version of Connor even being worse than Frankie Freako and the gang.
You
So
know, I feel
them,
like I feel like they've captured something, right, Chris, with this movie, man, that they can like catapult it to a second and a third, and when people catch on, goes, "What is this Frankie Freako?" You know, everyone's talking about it's so bad but so good, and so bad but yet fun to watch.
the wonderful thing about the position that you're in as a filmmaker, I know that you're looking to push your craft and eventually make a film. The wonderful thing about being an independent film right now is there's so many ways to crowdfund things that you do not have to rely on the standard publishing networks. If you're able to market yourself and get things out there, you yourself can get your own film made. So the only thing limiting this particular director, actors, the people involved in this film from making further installments is their own creativity and ability to network themselves and get out there and get things funded. So, I mean,
100%. I wish them luck, man. I hope they go for it and they go full force, and why not, man? And you leave a niche, and there's people like ourselves who enjoy this type of film, and we'll continue to watch, and we'll continue to talk about it. And it's great, it opens it up for other filmmakers who love creature features and had ideas. I'm sure it'll inspire other creature feature filmmakers to go, you know what? There's an audience here. There's a niche here, and I wish them all well, man. And I hope we bombard the not saturated, but like get some really good, you know, B-rated campy creature feature films back on screen.
here's the thing is that I was even talking to a friend of mine the other day. I watched Borderlands I
Okay.
just purchased a copy of Borderlands. I was like, okay, well, I played Borderlands a little bit, but not so much that like I'm obsessed with the game.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that, or I was hoping that the film would strike a different note with me personally
Uh-huh.
than, say, the average moviegoer that went having played through every single one of the games and just were obsessed with the game. Uh, and I know that a couple of my friends that have played religiously those particular games were disappointed with the film. Like, oh, this is
Oh,
garbage. They kind of didn't
that's too
do what
bad.
they needed to with the film. I watched it and I liked it.
Yeah.
But when you take Borderlands and put it up against Frankie Freako, I've watched Borderlands once. I watched Frankie Freako 3 times.
3 times.
Okay. The thing is that you don't have to have. I think like independent cinema is probably one of the few natural places to find freedom of expression right now. You're not finding a lot of freedom of expression in big budget films because you have so many restraints and so many cooks stirring the pot. It's not about the original artist's view.
Ideas and
Their
yeah,
yeah,
view and creativity. Yep.
it's not their view. It's not what they wanted for their passion project. So when you watch stuff like Frankie Freako, when you watch stuff like the Hazard Valley film videos, when you watch a lot of independent cinema, you're getting something pure. Even if it might not be up your alley, you're getting that person's vision, raw and uncut. And that I can appreciate. It's tough to get big budget films to feel that way. And it's why I don't watch a lot of big budget films. And I'll probably talk more shit about big budget films because, okay, how many millions of dollars went into your film and you still made something that felt disjointed,
Yeah.
disheartened most of the audience you were trying to aim at? And it's because you guys were trying to check off too many boxes. And you were trying to make this person happy and this person happy, and you're trying to pay X amount of money to this person, that person, who also all wanted their own opinions thrown into this person's creativity. So yeah, that's why I appreciate independent cinema over big budget films for the most part.
I'd have to agree with you, man. 100%. There's a level of storytelling based on what you envision as a filmmaker that you want to share with your with an audience because it's entertaining, it's fun. You just can't help. It's like when you're writing a song and the song is so good and it's your song and you want people to hear it and appreciate it. That's how filmmakers, especially independent filmmakers, feel, and that's what I love about platforms like YouTube, where you can share it and go into film festivals and be like, there's a niche and a bunch of people that enjoy, and for the sake of escape and the sake of seeing someone create something on medium. And I watch so many short films on YouTube now, and there are really bad ones, but there are really good ones. There are really great storied ones, and there's nothing that it's pure from the creator, from the filmmaker's perspective and their view, and you get to kind of peek at their thoughts and their feelings and their emotions and what they're conveying. And I'm with that. I like that, man. That's why I watched Frankie Freako and looked at it from the director's perspective, and I enjoyed it. I thought about it from the filmmaker's perspective, and then you know what? I enjoyed it, man. It was a lot of fun to watch, and I hope they do a sequel, and I'll watch it again, and hopefully you and I could talk about it. So I'm in, man. I love these type of films, and I hope they keep going. I hope these filmmakers get an opportunity to really to shine and show their creativity, even though it might be a small audience, but nonetheless, it's an audience.
I've got an idea for a follow-up episode involving us and Hazard Valley films. Why don't we'll take a quick little break,
Okay.
and in the future,
Yeah.
next month or two, we can sit
Okay.
down and take Frankie Freako and watch some of these other films, Munchies, Ghoulies,
Yeah,
Critters,
I'm so in.
compare them together, and then possibly pitch a crazy fucking movie where a lot of these creatures meet in the same universe.
It's fantastic, man. That's fantastic. It's a fucking multiverse of creatures, man.
Right, because you got them all. Why not? I mean, we had Jason versus Freddy. Why not Frankie versus Critters, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Frankie versus the Gremlins.
You may have started a whole new universe here, man. I dig it. I love it.
I think this deserves a sequel. I think this deserves a couple of crossovers, even if you have to hit the low budget films and do a Frankie Freako versus the Hobgoblins thing.
Bro, Chris, they made how many Sharknadoes? I mean, come on. You
Ooh,
know?
just thinking about Dottie, Frankie Freako versus Full Moon Entertainment's Puppet Master series.
Yeah. Wow.
Because honestly, some of those creatures kind of felt like, especially Dottie, she feels like the Six Gun cowboy from those movies.
Yeah, dude, Dottie, I mean, she's kind of a little badass herself.
I don't know if I'd hit on her, but yeah. Even after he saw her, he was still like, "Hey, how are you
he
down
was. He
there?"
was he was smitten. He was smitten.
Well, then he probably wouldn't have survived that electrocution over in Freak World there.
No.
No, I think the boss was definitely heavy freaky, even though he had a bland exterior.
Yeah, keep that Freako scanner away from the boss, man.
Right, right. Well, Benel, thank you for sitting down with us. And, well, me, I say us like I have Piper or Nico here with me today. Uh, Thank you for sitting down with me and talking about this film that I just randomly found scrolling on, just doom scrolling on Instagram one day. And why don't you go ahead and tell our viewers where they can find all your stuff?
Yeah, first I want to thank you for having me again, Chris. It's always an enjoyment, always a lot of fun to, this is I think our fourth podcast together, if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken, and each and every one's been a blast. And like I said earlier off recording, that you taught me so much about the whole kind of podcasting and interviewing world, and I'm new at this, and I want to be informative, but at the same time, you give me the freedom to just kind of enjoy the conversation. So I appreciate that about you, Chris. You're great, man. I love Cinematic Anarchy and all the things that you do, and all the things that you guys have talked about. I've listened to quite a few, and very enjoyable, very enjoyable. And I'm learning a lot, and I hope, we get to do this more, and I'm excited about doing more in the future.
Oh, yeah,
As
definitely.
far as Hazard Valley Films is concerned, we're there. YouTube, Instagram, follow us, enjoy our content. We want to be more creative. We want to and kind of expand our own, you know, short film universe, and I haven't been able to do a lot of filming, but we definitely got a lot of ideas planned in the future. So just give us a shot. Check us out. YouTube, Instagram, Hazard Valley Films. Love to have you part of our short films world family, I guess you could say. But again, thank you, Chris, for all you do, man. Very much appreciated.
Oh, it's absolutely no problem at all. And of course, our podcast you can find on Spotify. You can find it on YouTube now, and you can find it pretty much wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. As for Cinematic Anarchy's involvement with Hazard Valley Films, hey, maybe I can buy a train ticket out there one day, and we can sit down. You can throw me on one of your things.
Let's make that happen, man. Let's make that happen.
We,
That'll be a lot of fun.
you can kill me off in whatever fun way you want to kill me. Because
I'm gonna take note of that, man.
right, just have fun with it. Have fun with it.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to stray away from saying what Nico always says on the podcast, because the whole drink some water, you thirsty bitches thing never feels right coming off of my tongue. So I'm going to say something from my heart. there is a lot of things that you can throw your money at in this world. You can throw your money into political ventures. You can throw your money into a scratch ticket next door. But the best thing that you can throw your money into is to go online, hit Indiegogo, hit Patreon, hit your favorite podcast, hit your favorite YouTuber, and invest in independent thought and cinema and expression. If you have money to go throw $10 at a scratch ticket, that $10 honestly is going to mean a lot more to your favorite podcaster. It's going to mean a lot more to an independent artist trying to get their film off the ground. You may end up with a single piece of paper, or you may end up having that feeling of having invested in a movie or a podcast that got an episode out, got their film on the big screen, got a DVD, Blu-ray made of their film, whatever. Invest in film. Invest in cinema, invest in podcasting. That's pretty much all I've got to say. That's a long way, a long, terrible way to say what I wanted to say. It's a good message, but I got to shorten it. Invest in independent thought.
And cinematic anarchy.
Oh yeah, invest in anarchy, especially cinematic anarchy.